I am Rachel, 28 years old, and I just bought my first home after 10 years of grinding strict budgeting and countless sacrifices. 10 years of instant noodles, no shopping sprees, and saying no to vacations. My reward? A court summons from my own parents. Yes, you read that right. The people who should have been popping champagne and helping me pick out furniture were instead filing a lawsuit against me. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. If you are watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit that like and subscribe button, and stick around to hear how I fought back against the most unexpected enemies in my homeownership journey. Growing up in the Harrison household meant living under constant control. My mother Marilyn was the quintessential domineering parent, obsessed with status and appearances, and a master of emotional manipulation. She could switch from sugary sweet to ice cold in seconds if things were not going her way. My father Gerald was her perfect complement, conflict avoidant to a fault and passive-aggressive when cornered. He rarely stood up to her directly, instead becoming her enabler and occasional enforcer. We lived in a beautiful colonial-style house, in a respectable suburb, the kind of place where neighbors competed over lawn maintenance and holiday decorations. From the outside we appeared upper middle class and put together, but the facade masked serious financial insecurity. My parents stretched themselves thin, maintaining appearances, a fact I would only fully understand years later. Every aspect of my life fell under their scrutiny and control. My appearance was regulated down to the length of my hair and the colors I could wear. Friends needed to come from the right families with the right connections. My education was micromanaged with the expectation of perfect grades and activities that would look good on college applications. Money was their favorite control tool. I received an allowance, but it came with endless strings attached. Any savings accounts were opened in their names with me as a beneficiary, so they could monitor every cent. Birthday money from relatives mysteriously disappeared into accounts I could not access for my future good. Our family home never felt like a sanctuary. It was more like a beautiful prison, where I walked on eggshells, constantly worried about triggering one of my mother's moods or my father's cold disappointment. The tension was a physical presence, sitting heavy in rooms, even when words remained polite. Despite their suffocating control, I managed to plant early seeds of independence. During high school, I secretly got a part-time job at a local bookstore, telling my parents I was studying at the library. I hid the small paychecks in a hollowed-out book on my shelf, building my first taste of financial freedom, $1 at a time. When college application season arrived, I submitted scholarship applications behind their backs. They had their hearts set on me attending my father's prestigious alma mater, regardless of the crushing debt it would create. I applied there to keep peace, but simultaneously pursued community college options that would allow me to graduate debt-free. The explosion when I announced my decision to attend community college was nuclear. There were tears, threats of being disowned, and weeks of cold silence. But for the first time I held firm. At 18 I moved out with nothing but 2 suitcases, and my secret savings, finding a tiny apartment with roommates, Stephanie and Alicia, both also escaping difficult family situations. Those first months of freedom were terrifying and exhilarating. I ate ramen noodles for dinner most nights, and worked full-time while attending classes, but each decision was mine alone. No one monitored my comings and goings, or questioned my choices. The apartment was cramped, with 3 of us sharing a space meant for 2, but it felt more like home than my parents' house ever had. It was during our second year of living together that my dream of homeownership began to form. My friend Casey bought a small condo and hosted us for dinner parties in her very own space. I watched how she decorated, according to her tastes alone, how she spoke with pride about building equity instead of throwing money away on rent, how she had created a sanctuary that was completely hers. That night, I went home and fell down a rabbit hole of real estate websites. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, looking at houses in our area, calculating prices and mortgage estimates, trying to imagine myself with keys to my own front door. It became a nightly ritual, scrolling through listings before bed, educating myself on the market and possibilities. Soon I created a vision board with images of modest, achievable homes. Not mansions or luxury apartments, but small, single-family houses with character and potential. I researched everything I could about mortgages, down payments, credit scores, and first-time buyer programs. I read books from the library, attended free workshops at local banks, and absorbed every piece of information I could find. With all this knowledge, I set myself a 10-year plan. It seemed like an eternity at 20 years old, but I broke it down into specific savings goals and timeline milestones. I calculated exactly how much I would need to save each month, how I would need to build my credit, and what salary increases I should aim for to make my dream possible. The plan was ambitious but not impossible, requiring discipline and sacrifice, but offering independence as the ultimate reward. The decade that followed taught me more about discipline and delayed gratification than I ever wanted to learn. My budget was brutal but effective, allocating 50% of every paycheck directly to savings, leaving the bare minimum for living expenses. I tracked every single penny in a detailed spreadsheet, analyzing where I could cut further, and celebrating when I exceeded my monthly goals, even by a few dollars. My food choices became a masterclass in frugality. I bought in bulk meal prepped every Sunday, and learned to make instant noodles in 20 different ways to avoid flavor fatigue. Restaurants became a once-a-year birthday treat, and coffee shops were places I walked past, not into. I brought lunch to work every day, without exception, ignoring invitations to order takeout with colleagues. One job was not enough to meet my aggressive savings targets. After finishing my 8-hour office shift as an administrative assistant, I would change in the bathroom and head straight to a local diner for my second job, waitressing 4 nights a week. On weekends, I worked as a virtual assistant for a small business owner, taking on tasks I could complete from my apartment to save on transportation costs. Vacations became a foreign concept. While friends posted photos from beach getaways and European adventures, I picked up extra shifts to cover their absences. My wardrobe came exclusively from thrift stores, carefully selected pieces that could mix and match for years without replacement. Instead of buying books or paying for streaming services, I became best friends with the local librarians. When possible, I walked instead of taking public transportation, regardless of weather, calculating the health benefits alongside the financial ones. Despite the grueling schedule, I focused on strategic career progression. I transformed my entry-level administrative position into a department coordinator role through consistent reliability and volunteering for additional responsibilities. I took night classes to earn my business degree, timing them around my work schedule and studying during lunch breaks and bus rides. Any extra money went towards certification courses that increased my marketability. Each strategic job change came with careful negotiation for salary increases, sometimes accepting slightly lower offers with better advancement potential. My supervisor Barbara became a valuable mentor, recognizing my determination and providing guidance on navigating corporate politics and advancement opportunities. Throughout these grinding years, my relationship with my parents remained strained at best. I maintained obligatory monthly dinners that unfailingly left me emotionally drained. My mother, Marilyn, specialized in backhanded compliments about my playing house and surely getting tired of the independence game soon. My father, Gerald, delivered lectures about the real world and the importance of safety nets, clearly implying I had neither. Their predictions of my failure became increasingly transparent, as did their hints about the benefits of moving back home. Every achievement in my career was dismissed as temporary or insignificant, compared to what I could have accomplished with their preferred path. They viewed my independence not as maturity, but as a personal rejection of their wisdom and authority. Despite the emotional toll these interactions took, I continued meeting my financial milestones. Paying off my modest student loans became an intimate celebration with close friends, complete with a ceremonial printing and burning of the final statement. My credit score climbed steadily, eventually surpassing 800, a number that represented countless small decisions and sacrifices. My emergency fund reached the 6-month expense target I had set, providing a security blanket I had never had growing up. The down payment fund grew steadily, each deposit bringing me closer to my goal. Despite the tight budget, I never neglected retirement contributions, understanding that current sacrifice was securing both my near and distant future. I even began a small investment portfolio, educating myself through library books and free online courses. Through all the exhaustion ramen dinners and missed social events, I kept my eyes on the distant prize. 10 years seemed impossibly long at the beginning, but as I passed the halfway mark, the time began accelerating. My spreadsheets shifted from theoretical projections to concrete realities, and house listings transformed from fantasy browsing to serious consideration. The finish line was finally coming into view. After nearly a decade of preparation, beginning the actual house search felt surreal. I connected with Realtor Amanda through a colleague recommendation, specifically seeking someone who would respect my budget rather than constantly trying to upsell me. At our first meeting, I arrived with a binder of research financial documents and clearly defined parameters. Her impressed expression validated all those years of meticulous planning. The pre-approval process brought a surprising revelation. Thanks to my excellent credit score and steady employment history, I qualified for more than I had expected. Still, I remained committed to staying well below my maximum approval amount, understanding that banks often permitted more than was truly affordable for comfortable living. Amanda and I created detailed must-have versus nice-to-have lists to establish realistic expectations. 3 bedrooms would be nice, but 2 was my minimum. Updated kitchen, preferred but not essential. Good school district, not currently relevant but important for resale value. Garage negotiable. Reasonable commute distance. Absolute must-have. Walking into those first open houses triggered a complex emotional cocktail. Excitement at finally taking tangible steps toward my goal, mixed with nervousness about making such a significant decision. Imposter syndrome crept in as I stood among other prospective buyers, who seemed more confident, more established, more deserving somehow. I combated these feelings by asking informed questions about foundation issues, electrical updates, and property taxes, reminding myself how thoroughly I had prepared for this moment. I quickly learned the specialized terminology of house hunting: HVAC systems, load-bearing walls, escrow accounts, amortization schedules, and easements entered my vocabulary. I educated myself about home inspections, learning what red flags to watch for and which cosmetic issues could be easily addressed later. Each showing was both a potential home and an education, refining my understanding of what I truly needed versus wanted. The market proved more challenging than anticipated. Despite my careful preparation, I was outbid on my first 3 offers, even when going above asking price. The emotional roller coaster was brutal, allowing hope to build with each promising property only to have it crushed with each rejection. I began considering expanding my search to less desirable neighborhoods, questioning whether I had been too rigid in my requirements. After the 6th rejected offer, discouragement set in deeply. I suggested to Amanda that perhaps I should continue renting for another year, hoping the market might cool. She reminded me that waiting carried its own risks, with interest rates likely to rise. Her encouragement to stay patient and persistent became a necessary lifeline during this frustrating phase. She had seen this pattern before and assured me the right property would eventually align with my persistence. The house hunting remained my secret until a casual slip during a family dinner revealed my intentions. My mother Marilyn nearly choked on her wine before tears welled in her eyes, accusing me of planning to abandon them completely. My father Gerald immediately launched into his familiar lecture about maintenance costs, property taxes, and all the hidden expenses I surely had not considered. Their reaction was so disproportionate that even my brother Derek looked uncomfortable. They insisted I was making a catastrophic mistake that would leave me financially ruined. The pinnacle of this uncomfortable evening came when they offered to loan me money for a down payment, a proposition riddled with obvious strings and control opportunities. I firmly declined, explaining that my savings were sufficient and my decision final. The silent drive home that night confirmed I had made the right choice in keeping my plans private for so long. Just when house hunting fatigue had truly set in, Amanda called with a last-minute showing opportunity. A property had just been listed that morning, and she had a gut feeling about its suitability. Rearranging my work schedule, I met her that afternoon at a modest two-bedroom Craftsman on a quiet tree-lined street. The house had obvious character beneath years of dated decor, with original hardwood floors hiding under worn carpet and charming built-ins painted over with questionable color choices. The inspection revealed issues that had scared away other potential buyers, primarily old electrical wiring and a roof nearing the end of its lifespan. Rather than deterrents, I saw these as negotiation points and manageable problems with proper planning. The location was perfect, just 20 minutes from my office, with proximity to grocery stores, parks, and public transportation. The neighborhood showed signs of growth with new businesses opening, and modest property value increases over recent years. The moment I walked into the sunlit living room with its large windows and cozy fireplace, something clicked into place. Despite the outdated wallpaper and scuffed floors, I could envision exactly how the space could transform. This house needed work, but it also needed someone who would appreciate its potential and character. That someone was me. I instructed Amanda to prepare an offer that same day, including a personal letter to the sellers, explaining why their house would become my home. The negotiation process tested every nerve in my body. Amanda advised me on a strategic offering price slightly below asking, but accompanied by my personal letter and proof of solid financing. Hours stretched into an eternity. As we waited for a response, my phone never leaving my sight. When Amanda finally called with news, I learned the sellers had received a higher offer, but chose mine based on my letter and their desire to sell to someone who would love the house rather than flip it. The inspection period brought its own anxieties. I hired a thorough inspector who spent nearly 4 hours examining every inch of the property. His report confirmed the electrical and roof issues we had anticipated, but revealed no structural or foundation problems. Each item became a point in our subsequent negotiation, resulting in a price reduction that would cover approximately half the cost of the necessary repairs. The appraisal represented another potential hurdle. If the house appraised for less than my offer, I would need to make up the difference in cash or renegotiate. The tense waiting period ended with relief when the appraisal came in exactly at the purchase price, validating my research on comparable properties in the area. The mortgage approval process involved mountains of paperwork that made my meticulous record-keeping suddenly worthwhile. I provided years of tax returns, bank statements, pay stubs, and employment verification. Each request for additional documentation sent my anxiety spiraling, despite my loan officer's assurances that these were routine requirements. The underwriting process stretched weeks longer than expected, testing my patience and sanity. Title search, insurance quotes, and closing cost calculations brought unexpected expenses that required adjustments to my carefully planned budget. I spent hours researching homeowners' insurance options, comparing coverage details and premiums, to find the best protection at a reasonable price. Even with these surprises, my emergency fund remained intact, providing peace of mind during this financially vulnerable transition. When closing day finally arrived, I took the entire day off work, too nervous to focus on anything else. At the title company office, I signed what felt like hundreds of documents until my hand cramped. Each signature represented a decade of sacrifice and determination coming to fruition. The moment the final page was signed, Amanda presented me with the house keys on a special keychain she had custom-made with my new address. Walking through the empty house alone, as the owner created an indescribable feeling. I moved slowly from room to room, running my hands along walls that now belonged to me, listening to the unique creaks and settling sounds of my home. In the living room, I sat cross-legged on the floor and allowed myself to cry happy tears, releasing 10 years of stress and anticipation in one cathartic moment. That first night I celebrated with takeout Chinese food eaten on my kitchen counter, followed by sleeping on an air mattress in what would become my bedroom. Despite the discomfort and the echoing emptiness of the unfurnished space, I fell asleep with a profound sense of accomplishment and security. This house represented not just a financial investment but a triumph of self-determination over doubt and opposition. I shared my news selectively, inviting close friends for a small housewarming gathering the following weekend. They arrived with practical gifts, bottles of wine, and genuine excitement for my achievement. We toasted with plastic cups in my empty dining room, sitting on folding chairs, and dreaming about how the space would evolve. Their pride in me reflected back the magnitude of what I had accomplished, something my family had never provided. My brother Derek visited separately, bringing a toolkit as a housewarming gift. His congratulations seemed sincere, though tinged with a warning about our parents' potential reaction. He had always navigated the family dynamics more successfully than I had maintaining peace, without completely surrendering his autonomy. His gift came with an offer to help with projects whenever needed, a tentative olive branch between us. My coworkers organized a surprise celebration lunch complete with a card signed by the entire department and a gift card to a home improvement store. Barbara pulled me aside afterward to express her admiration for my disciplined approach to achieving this milestone, reinforcing that my path had been unconventional, but ultimately successful on my own terms. After much deliberation, I posted a simple announcement on social media, a photo of my new keys, with a caption about achieving my decade-long goal. I deliberately avoided showing the house or revealing its location, mindful of privacy and security concerns. The post received overwhelming support, even from distant acquaintances and former classmates who had lost touch over the years. The concerning silence from my parents, after I informed them by phone of my completed purchase, stretched into 2 weeks of unexpected peace. I began small renovation projects, starting with stripping the dated wallpaper in the dining room and researching eco-friendly paint options. Each change, however, minor, transformed the house further into my home, erasing the previous owner's presence and establishing my vision. The illusion of peace shattered with the delivery of an official-looking envelope by courier. Standing in my kitchen, still wearing paint-stained clothes, I opened it to find court summons, papers, with my parents' names listed as plaintiffs. My initial reaction was denial, certain this must be some administrative error or case of mistaken identity. As I read through the lawsuit claims, horror mounted with each paragraph, culminating in physical symptoms of nausea and uncontrollable shaking. I collapsed onto my newly purchased couch, struggling to breathe, as the reality of their betrayal sank in. With trembling hands I called Derek, who confirmed what the papers stated. Our parents had indeed filed a lawsuit against me, something he had heard mentioned but dismissed as an empty threat. Their action was real, calculated, and designed to devastate at what should have been my moment of greatest achievement. The lawsuit contained 4 primary claims, each more outrageous than the last. First, they alleged I owed them $157,000 for expenses incurred during raising me, including detailed line items for food, clothing, education, and even birthday parties they had hosted. Second, they claimed several family heirlooms in my possession, including my grandmother's jewelry, and a small antique desk had been stolen, rather than gifted as I had always understood. Their third claim alleged they had provided undocumented loans throughout my adult life that required immediate repayment with interest. This fabrication particularly stung given my careful avoidance of financial entanglements with them precisely to prevent such claims. Finally, and most disturbing, they asserted they deserved partial ownership of my house due to their investment in my education and upbringing, requesting a lien on my property until their demands were satisfied. The court date was set for just 4 weeks away, barely enough time to process the emotional trauma before needing to mount a legal defense. The home that had represented freedom and achievement suddenly felt tainted by their toxic reach, their attempt to control extending into what should have been my safe haven. That night, I locked every door and window, irrationally afraid they might physically invade the space they were already attacking legally. The weeks following the summons delivery, became a blur of emotional turmoil. I cycled rapidly through shock denial, desperate bargaining, incandescent anger, and profound grief. Sleep became elusive as I paced through my new home at night rooms that had felt welcoming now shadowed by betrayal. During rare moments of rest, I would startle awake at small sounds, convinced someone was trying to take my house from me. Panic attacks began to strike, without warning triggered by mail deliveries or the phone ringing. My appetite disappeared completely, resulting in noticeable weight loss that prompted concerned comments from colleagues. For the first time in my professional life, I called in sick for a full week, unable to maintain the focused facade necessary for work. Home improvement projects stood abandoned, half-stripped wallpaper and paint samples, a visual representation of my interrupted joy. My carefully cultivated support system activated immediately. Stephanie took emergency leave from her job and stayed with me that first week, sleeping on my air mattress and ensuring I ate at least one meal daily. She fielded calls from concerned friends and managed practical details I could not face, like notifying my manager of my absence and rescheduling appointments. Casey dedicated her evenings to researching family attorneys, creating a spreadsheet of options, categorized by specialization, success rates, and fee structures. Her analytical approach to the problem provided a framework when my own thinking was too clouded by emotion to be effective. Her presence grounded me in reality when catastrophic thoughts threatened to overwhelm. Alicia appointed herself my nutrition guardian, appearing regularly with homemade meals packaged in individual portions with reheating instructions. She would sit with me while I ate, sharing inconsequential stories about her day that required no response but provided welcome distraction from my circling thoughts. Her matter-of-fact approach to care allowed no room for refusal but never felt invasive. At work, Barbara arranged flexible hours upon my return, creating a schedule that accommodated both my legal appointments and emotional capacity. She shielded me from office politics and unnecessary stress, reassigning projects that could wait and preserving those that provided healthy distraction. Her quiet support extended to occasional check-in texts that never demanded immediate response, but assured me of workplace stability. Derek became an unexpected ally, providing invaluable insight into our parents' motivations and plans. His position as the favorite child gave him access to conversations I would never be privy to, information he now shared freely, despite the risk to his own relationship with them. His guilt at not warning me earlier transformed into determination to help me fight back. An online homeowner community I had joined during my house hunting phase became another source of support and practical advice. Several members had experienced family legal disputes over property and offered both emotional encouragement and tactical suggestions for navigating the coming court battle. Their collective wisdom helped me understand I was not alone in facing family betrayal over financial independence. With Casey Research leading the way, I found attorney Diane specializing in family law with experience in parental claim cases. Our initial consultation revealed encouraging news: my parents had virtually no legal standing for their outrageous claims. As adults, parents cannot retroactively charge their children for basic caregiving expenses that are legally their obligation. Gifts once given without written loan agreements cannot be reclaimed through the courts. And their claim to partial house ownership based on raising me had no legal foundation whatsoever. Despite the promising legal outlook, Diane warned that emotional manipulation would be their primary tactic in court. We developed strategies for maintaining composure during proceedings, including breathing techniques and mental preparation for likely triggers. She advised documenting everything, creating timelines of significant events, and gathering evidence to counter each specific claim. I spent days organizing financial records that proved all house payments came from my own accounts, with clear documentation of the source of every dollar. For the heirloom items they claimed were stolen, I found birthday cards and emails explicitly stating these were gifts, along with photographs showing them presenting these items to me on special occasions. I prepared records of my independent living since age 18, establishing the clear financial separation I had maintained. As the legal preparation progressed, Derek revealed disturbing information about our parents' true motivations. They had recently remortgaged their house to cover mounting debts primarily from my father Gerald's gambling habit that had escalated over the past 5 years. My mother Marilyn's shopping addiction had maxed out multiple credit cards, creating a financial crisis they had successfully hidden from extended family and friends. Most shocking was their assumption that I would provide for their retirement, a plan they had apparently discussed between themselves for years without ever mentioning to me. My house purchase had triggered panic because they had intended to eventually move in with me, temporarily a scenario that would inevitably become permanent. Their lawsuit was both punishment for my independence and a desperate attempt to solve their self-created financial problems. Derek further revealed this was not their first attempt at such manipulation. They had executed similar financial control tactics with other family members, including an elderly aunt whose inheritance they had managed to access through questionable means. This pattern extended back years, explaining the strained relationships and uncomfortable silences at family gatherings I had noticed, but never fully understood. This knowledge, while painful, provided clarity and strengthened my resolve. The lawsuit was not truly about money owed or property rights, but about control punishment and their refusal to accept my independence. Armed with this understanding and Diane expertise, I began to feel the first glimmers of confidence about the coming court battle. Their weapons were manipulation and lies. Mine would be documentation and truth. As the court date approached, preparation intensified to an almost military precision. Diane arranged mock court sessions where she played the role of both judge and opposing counsel, throwing the most outrageous accusations and emotionally manipulative questions at me to test my composure. These practice runs proved invaluable, identifying specific triggers and developing automatic responses that would appear calm and reasoned regardless of my internal state. Selecting the right outfit became a strategic decision rather than merely aesthetic. I chose a conservative navy blue pantsuit that projected professionalism and confidence without appearing ostentatious or frivolous. Diane advised minimal jewelry and natural makeup to present an image of responsibility and maturity that would counteract any attempts to portray me as an irresponsible or ungrateful child. I incorporated meditation and therapy techniques to manage the crippling anxiety that preceded the hearing. Each morning began with breathing exercises and positive affirmations focused on my strength and legitimacy. Each evening ended with progressive muscle relaxation to combat the physical tension that had become my constant companion. These practices did not eliminate the stress, but made it marginally more manageable. The final week before court involved meticulous organization of all documentation and evidence. Each claim in the lawsuit had its own folder, with corresponding counter-evidence arranged chronologically and indexed for easy reference during proceedings. Diane and I reviewed everything multiple times, anticipating questions and preparing concise factual responses that would directly address the legal questions without emotional digression. The night before the hearing, my closest friends gathered for a support dinner in my home. They brought comfort food, distracting board games, and a collective determination to keep the evening focused on calm preparation rather than anxious speculation. They each shared stories of their own family conflicts and resolutions, normalizing my experience and reinforcing that relationships sometimes require difficult boundaries to remain healthy. The morning of the hearing arrived with a physical routine designed to manage anxiety. An early run to exhaust excess adrenaline, a protein-rich breakfast to stabilize blood sugar, and carefully timed departure to arrive early, but not so early that waiting would amplify nervousness. Derek met me in the parking lot, offering to walk in with me, despite the potential conflict with our parents. His presence beside me provided unexpected comfort as we approached the imposing courthouse steps. The county courthouse, a grand stone building with formal columns and imposing steps, projected an intimidating formality that heightened my nerves. The security check and waiting room procedures created additional stress, the mundane bureaucracy of checking in and waiting for our case to be called stretching minutes into perceived hours. Diane maintained a calm professional demeanor that helped anchor me amid the swirling anxiety. The first sight of my parents across the waiting area sent a physical shock through my system. My mother Marilyn had carefully crafted her appearance for maximum sympathy, wearing an outdated dress that emphasized her age and vulnerability. I recognized her practiced expressions of hurt and betrayal, the same manipulative performance she had perfected throughout my childhood. My father Gerald sat rigidly beside her, refusing to make eye contact with either me or Derek, his body language communicating righteous indignation. Their lawyer approached our bench before proceedings began, attempting an intimidating introduction that Diane smoothly intercepted with professional courtesy that allowed no opening for manipulation. His aggressive stance and too loud voice marked him as someone who relied on intimidation rather than legal merit, a realization that strangely calmed some of my anxiety. Diane whispered that such tactics often backfired with experienced judges, suggesting he knew their case lacked substantial legal foundation. When our case was called, we entered the courtroom and took our positions. Judge Catherine, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and penetrating eyes, began with no-nonsense statements about the purpose of the hearing and her expectations for decorum. Her initial review of the filed documents included several skeptical expressions that Diane later identified as promising signs of the judge recognizing the frivolous nature of the claims. My parents' lawyer presented their case with dramatic flair and emotional appeals, displaying spreadsheets of alleged expenses and enlarged photographs of the heirloom items they claimed were wrongfully in my possession. He emphasized themes of family obligation, parental sacrifice, and filial ingratitude in language designed to provoke emotional rather than legal responses. His presentation included several procedural missteps that Judge Catherine noted with increasing impatience. When Diane rose for our response, her approach provided stark contrast. She methodically addressed each claim with specific legal precedents and factual evidence, her calm demeanor and organized presentation creating an impression of reasoned legitimacy. For the expense claim, she presented cases establishing that parents cannot retroactively charge for basic child-rearing expenses. For the heirlooms, she showed the cards and emails documenting them as gifts, along with photographs of presentation moments. The financial records I had so carefully maintained proved invaluable, demonstrating clear separation between my finances and my parents since I was 18 years old. Timeline documentation established that every dollar of my house down payment came from my own earned income, with bank statements showing regular deposits corresponding exactly to my employment history. Each piece of evidence systematically dismantled their narrative of entitlement to my achievements. As our evidence mounted, Judge Catherine directed increasingly skeptical questions toward my parents and their attorney. She questioned the lack of any written loan agreements, the absence of any repayment requests until after my house purchase, and the convenient timing of their suddenly remembered financial claims. With each question, my father grew visibly more agitated, while my mother intensified her performance of tearful injury. The proceedings took a dramatic turn during cross-examination, when Diane carefully questioned my father about the family finances. Under pressure, he blurted out an angry admission about recent gambling losses, information that directly contradicted earlier testimony about their financial stability. This outburst led to a cascade of revelations, including that they had hoped to use my house for an equity loan to solve their financial problems. My mother, attempting to regain control of the narrative, admitted they had always expected to live with me eventually. In her view, my independent purchase of a home without their input or inclusion constituted a betrayal of natural family obligation. This admission visibly surprised even their own lawyer, who appeared increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of their testimony and its implications. Judge Catherine's interjection came with stern professionalism, her comments about frivolous lawsuits and abuse of the court system leaving no doubt about her assessment of the case. She noted the complete lack of legal foundation for their claims and the concerning pattern of attempted financial control evidenced in the proceedings. Her decision came swiftly and definitively, case dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could not refile the same claims in the future. Additionally, she ordered them to pay my legal fees, an unusual step that signaled her recognition of the lawsuit's malicious intent. The aftermath in the courthouse hallway became its own battlefield. My parents attempted to intercept me, my mother calling out dramatically about family loyalty, and my father trying to position himself physically in my path. Prepared for this moment, I delivered the statement Diane and I had carefully crafted about permanent boundaries, making clear that their lawsuit had severed any remaining relationship between us. My mother's response included threats about family inheritance and reputation claims that held no power over me after witnessing their true intentions in court. My father made one final attempt at guilt manipulation, asking how I could do this to the people who had given me life and sacrificed for my well-being. With Diane beside me and Derek slightly behind, I maintained eye contact briefly before turning and walking away, their continued calls echoing behind us as we exited the building. Diane escorted me directly to my car and reviewed safety planning measures we had discussed previously. While she did not anticipate physical retaliation, she advised changing locks, considering a security system, and documenting any contact attempts. Her calm professionalism throughout this final interaction helped me maintain composure until I reached the privacy of my car, where the emotional weight of the day finally broke through in tears of relief, anger, and profound sadness. The immediate aftermath of the court victory brought conflicting emotions. Overwhelming relief at the legal resolution existed alongside profound grief for the family relationship that had been irreparably damaged. For that first week, I took a proper vacation from work, my first in over a decade, that was not devoted to additional employment or education. The unstructured days allowed space to process the complex emotions without the pressure of professional performance. I focused on reclaiming my home as a safe space. Following advice from both my therapist and my more spiritually inclined friends, I performed a sage burning ritual to symbolically cleanse the space of negative energy. While not ordinarily drawn to such practices, the act of moving methodically through each room with intention helped transform the psychological association from threat back to sanctuary. I rearranged furniture, creating new traffic patterns and sightlines that felt distinctly different from before the lawsuit. Derek visited during this period, bringing dinner and willingness to discuss our complicated family dynamics with new honesty. We acknowledged the different roles we had been assigned in the family system and how those patterns had shaped our individual choices and relationship with each other. For perhaps the first time, we spoke as adults without the distorting lens of our parents' expectations and manipulations. While not completely healed, our sibling relationship began a tentative evolution towards something healthier. The first truly peaceful night's sleep came almost 2 weeks after the court date. I awoke naturally with sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, momentarily disoriented by the absence of anxiety that had become so familiar. That morning marked a subtle but significant shift, a physical recognition that the threat had passed and safety had been restored. I celebrated with pancakes, a small personal acknowledgement of progress that required no audience. My healing journey required professional support beyond what friends could provide. I began weekly therapy with Dr. Madison, a specialist in family trauma who helped me understand the patterns of control and emotional manipulation that had defined my upbringing. We worked on identifying internalized messages that still influenced my decision-making and relationships, particularly around money, achievement, and self-worth. The home improvement projects that had stalled during the lawsuit period became therapeutic activities, each wall painted in colors. I selected each fixture replaced with my preferences, each garden bed planted with flowers I loved served as tangible reminders of my agency and independence. The physical transformation of the house paralleled my internal rebuilding, creating spaces that reflected only my tastes and needs without compromise or apology. The financial recovery from legal expenses took strategic planning but proved manageable thanks to my emergency fund. I created a replenishment schedule that would restore my safety net within 6 months, adjusting discretionary spending temporarily, without sacrificing retirement contributions or home maintenance needs. This process reinforced the value of the financial discipline I had practiced for years now, protecting me in exactly the way I had hoped it would. Establishing firm boundaries with extended family became another necessary aspect of healing. I composed thoughtful emails to aunts, uncles, and cousins, explaining my decision to maintain distance from my parents without requesting they take sides or alter their own relationships. These communications outlined my boundaries clearly, while acknowledging the difficult position family members might feel caught in. Most responses were supportive or at least respectful, with only a few flying monkeys attempting to broker reconciliation without accountability. Throughout this period, my chosen family deepened into the support system my biological family had never provided. Friendships evolved beyond shared activities into relationships, characterized by mutual vulnerability and authentic connection. Stephanie, Casey, and Alicia became my core circle, present for both celebrations and difficult days without judgment or conditions. Our weekly dinner rotation became a touchstone of stability and belonging. My neighborhood connections expanded through participation in a community garden project 2 blocks from my house. The regular interaction with neighbors of various ages and backgrounds provided a sense of community rootedness I had never experienced growing up. These relationships, focused on shared interests rather than obligation, demonstrated healthier social dynamics that contrasted sharply with my family experience. At work, I found unexpected fulfillment in mentoring junior colleagues, sharing knowledge and perspective that helped them navigate corporate challenges. This role allowed me to transform my difficult experiences into valuable guidance, creating meaning from previous struggles. Several mentees became friends outside the office, adding another dimension to my expanding social network. As holidays approached, I faced the challenge of creating new traditions to replace family-centered celebrations that had always been more obligation than joy. Friends in similar situations joined me in planning alternative gatherings focused on genuine connection rather than obligation or performance. Thanksgiving became a potluck for strays. Christmas transformed into a day of volunteer service, followed by movie marathons, and New Year's evolved into a goal-setting retreat with my closest friends. The possibility of reconciliation with Derek progressed cautiously as he established his own boundaries with our parents. Our relationship remained complicated by shared history, but strengthened through honest communication about expectations and limits. We developed a siblinghood based on mutual respect, rather than shared obligation to our parents, allowing space for independent choices while maintaining connection. After several months of focused therapy work, I cautiously began dating again with healthier expectations and boundaries. Previous relationships had often replicated familiar patterns of seeking approval and accepting control dynamics I now recognized and actively avoided. The therapy progress allowed me to identify potential partners who respected autonomy and practiced direct communication skills my parents' relationship had never modeled. On the 1-year anniversary of homeownership, I finally held the proper housewarming party I had originally planned. The home had transformed through my own efforts and investments with updated electrical systems, a new roof, freshly painted walls, and gardens beginning to flourish. The before and after photos displayed at the party told the story of both physical renovation and personal transformation, a visual testimony to resilience and growth. My financial stability had not only recovered but strengthened during the year. The discipline that had enabled my house purchase continued to serve me well, with strategic decisions leading to a promotion at work and increased retirement contributions. The lawsuit that had been intended to destroy my independence had instead reinforced my commitment to financial self-sufficiency. The experience crystallized important life lessons that would guide my future decisions. I gained clarity that blood relation does not automatically equal healthy relationship, that family should be defined by consistent love and respect, rather than genetic connection. I recognized generational patterns of control and financial manipulation that had likely extended back decades, patterns I was now empowered to break rather than perpetuate. My definition of personal success evolved beyond external metrics or others' expectations to encompass internal peace and authentic self-expression. I learned that true safety comes from establishing healthy boundaries rather than building impenetrable walls, allowing selective vulnerability with trusted people while maintaining necessary protection from those who had proven harmful. Looking toward the future, new horizons opened in multiple dimensions. My career path expanded with opportunities for advancement and specialization that aligned with my natural strengths and interests. The possibility of a healthy romantic relationship seemed more realistic after doing the internal work necessary to recognize and require respect and reciprocity. My investment planning expanded to consider a rental property as a next step, using the knowledge gained through my homeownership experience to build additional financial security. Community involvement deepened my sense of purpose and contribution, creating meaningful connections beyond personal benefit. I found peace with the past, without requiring reconciliation, accepting that some relationships cannot be healed without mutual commitment to change. Perhaps most importantly, I developed a regular gratitude practice, focused on appreciating the journey despite its difficulties. Each challenge had ultimately strengthened my resilience and clarified my values, creating a foundation for authentic living that would have been impossible without confronting these painful truths. The house keys that had once represented only independence came to symbolize a more nuanced understanding of both independence and interdependence. The painful lawsuit initiated by my parents, while traumatic, had served as the necessary severance from toxic patterns that might otherwise have continued indefinitely. My home had become a physical manifestation of self-trust and resilience, a space where I could both provide and receive genuine care without manipulation or control. As I close this chapter of my story, I realize that the true foundation we build in life has little to do with mortgage payments or property deeds. It comes from constructing a life aligned with our deepest values, surrounded by relationships based on mutual respect and care. I wonder what boundaries you have needed to establish in your own life, and how they have shaped your journey toward authentic independence. If my story resonated with you in any way, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Consider subscribing for more stories about navigating difficult family dynamics and building a life on your own terms. Thank you for witnessing this chapter of my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in building your own foundations that truly last.